What if I told you that you could walk into any room, any negotiation, any conversation, and have the upper hand without ever raising your voice or proving a point? That you could outmaneuver the smartest person in the room, not by knowing more, but by seeing more. Most people think intelligence is about IQ, about facts, degrees, and big words. It's not. Outsmarting someone has very little to do with what you know, and everything to do with how well you understand people, including yourself. And the truth is, most people are running on autopilot, reacting instead of responding, talking more than they listen, desperate to be seen as smart, respected, powerful without realizing they're exposing their weaknesses with every word. Here's the thing. The smartest people don't talk the most. They watch. They read between the lines. They know how to sit in silence so thick it makes the other person unravel. They never play all their cards because they don't need to. One move is all it takes if it's the right one. If you've ever walked away from a conversation thinking, I should have said this, I should have done that, this is for you, because this isn't about manipulating anyone, this isn't about deception. This is about understanding how the game is played, so you stop being played. For the next 30 minutes, I'm going to show you how to outsmart anyone, not with arrogance, not with aggression, but with strategy, awareness, and precision. You don't need to be the loudest. You don't need to be the most experienced. You just need to see what they don't want you to see and know exactly when to move. Let's begin. Before you ever think about outsmarting anyone else, you have to first outsmart yourself. That may sound strange, but it's the truth. The real battlefield isn't in the boardroom, the courtroom, or across a dinner table. It's in your own mind. If you can't control your emotions, your thoughts, your reactions, someone else will. Think about it. Every time you get triggered, every time you lose your temper, every time you get defensive or flustered or offended, what you're really doing is handing over control. You're giving someone else the ability to pull your strings. And when they know they can get a reaction out of you, they've already won. That's not power. That's predictability. And predictability is a weakness. Mental mastery means being able to pause when every part of you wants to explode. It means holding steady when you're under pressure, when you're being challenged, when you're being pushed to the edge. You can't outthink someone when your emotions are doing the thinking for you. And that's exactly what happens to most people. They get hijacked by their own feelings. Anger, insecurity, fear, ego, all of those things cloud your judgment and distort your decision-making. The people who seem the most powerful in the room aren't necessarily the loudest, the most charismatic, or even the most confident. They're the ones who can hold their ground, who don't flinch, who don't need to prove anything. That level of stillness, that comes from discipline. It comes from mental training. You train your mind the same way you train your body in small, repeated challenges. When someone interrupts you, do you immediately snap back, or can you hold the line and respond with calm? When you feel the need to correct someone to protect your ego, can you instead sit back and let it go, knowing that silence is sometimes more powerful than being right? Every interaction is an opportunity to sharpen this skill. Because the truth is, the moment you let someone make you feel small, angry, frustrated, you've already lost the advantage. You're reacting, not leading. And people who want to manipulate or control you, they feed off that. They study your tells. They look for cracks in your armor. And your emotions are the easiest ones to exploit. That's why outsmarting anyone starts with internal control. It starts with knowing your triggers better than anyone else does. Because the moment you know where you're vulnerable, you can protect it. You stop walking into situations blind. You stop giving away pieces of yourself just to feel seen or validated. Ask yourself, what makes you feel insecure? What kind of comments or people rattle you? And more importantly, why? When you understand that, you stop becoming an easy target. You stop playing checkers in a game of chess. Mental mastery also means not taking things personally. This is huge. Most people walk around with open wounds, so when someone criticizes them, ignores them, challenges them, it hits too deep. But when you've done the inner work, when you know your own worth, those things don't land. You become untouchable, not because you don't feel, but because you don't let temporary feelings dictate permanent actions. There's also the illusion that being emotional equals being weak. Not true. Emotions are powerful when you're in charge of them. Emotional intelligence is the secret weapon. It means being able to read the room, understand your own state, and regulate your response in real time. It's like having a control panel in your head while everyone else is reacting on impulse. The calmest person in the room is usually the one with the most control. Think about high-stakes professionals, interrogators, negotiators, elite performers. They're trained to slow their breath, observe instead of react, and stay composed no matter what chaos is happening around them. That doesn't come from luck. It comes from intention, from preparation, from practice. You don't have to be in law enforcement or military or intelligence to train like that. You can do it in everyday life. Start by observing your thoughts. Watch how your mind spins when someone challenges you. Watch how your body reacts, heart racing, hands tightening, breath shortening. That's your nervous system hijacking your power. But if you can notice it in the moment and take control, even just by pausing and taking a breath, you win. That breath is everything. It's the space between stimulus and response. It's where your power lives. Outsmarting someone isn't about who has the higher IQ or the sharper tongue. It's about who can hold their ground, who can see clearly under pressure, who can listen without needing to speak, who can let silence do the heavy lifting. Mental strength also means knowing when not to act. That's one of the most underestimated forms of intelligence, restraint. People assume the smart move is always the bold move, the clever remark, the mic drop moment. But sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is hold back, to let others underestimate you, to let the moment pass because you see a better opening coming. This is where strategy lives, in stillness, in patience, in awareness. When you master your own mind, you start seeing the plays 3 moves ahead. You stop getting pulled into petty arguments. You stop reacting to noise, and you start leading the room without saying a word. So the next time you find yourself in a high-pressure moment, ask yourself, am I in control or am I being controlled? Am I responding or am I reacting? The answer to those questions will tell you everything you need to know about who really has the power. Because power doesn't always speak. Sometimes it just watches and waits. Most people think the ability to outsmart someone else comes down to knowledge, strategy, or some kind of advanced trickery. But the truth is much simpler and much harder. The real edge, the one that makes someone quietly powerful, is self-control. It's not just knowing what to say or do. It's knowing when not to speak, when not to act, and how to master the one thing most people overlook, their own mind. You can't control the world around you. You can't control how people treat you, what they say, how they push your buttons. But what you can control, if you're disciplined enough, is your response. And that's everything. Your mind is your greatest weapon, but it can also be your greatest liability. If you don't know how to use it, it will turn against you. It will take you down paths you didn't choose. It will react emotionally, impulsively, defensively. And in those moments when you're triggered, flustered, or rushing to respond, you lose clarity, you lose precision, you lose power. Imagine walking into a room where someone questions your intelligence, your authority, your worth. What's your instinct? For most people, it's to defend themselves, to push back, to prove something. But what if you didn't? What if you just stayed still? What if you let them talk, watched closely, and responded only when the time was right? That's mental control. That's the difference between someone who plays the game and someone who owns it. There's a saying, he who angers you controls you. That's not just a nice quote, that's truth. The moment someone else can make you feel anything angry, insecure, embarrassed, they've taken control. And they can use that control against you, often without saying much. They can shift your focus, make you second guess, push you into a reaction that makes you look weak, and you'll think it was your idea, but it wasn't. It was theirs. They played you because they had the one thing you didn't in that moment, emotional discipline. We live in a world that rewards reactivity. People online are quick to clap back, snap judgments are celebrated, and being real is often just a mask for being impulsive. But the people who truly hold power, the kind that isn't just loud but lasting, are never reactive. They don't rush. They don't break their silence unless it serves them. And they're not afraid of stillness. Stillness makes most people uncomfortable. We equate silence with weakness. But silence is often the sharpest weapon in the room. It unnerves people. It forces them to fill the space, to talk too much, to reveal too much, all because they need the reassurance of a response. But if you've trained your mind to be at ease in that silence, you hold the upper hand. You let the other person do the work. You let them reveal their position, their emotions, their next move. And that's the thing, when your mind is quiet, you can actually hear. You can actually see. You pick up on tone, posture, word choice, hesitation. things other people miss because they're too busy preparing their next comeback. Control gives you access to deeper information, better judgment, and sharper timing. But control doesn't come naturally. It's a trained habit. It's built one moment at a time. You don't become mentally strong because you read about it or talked about it. You become mentally strong because you practiced it. When someone tried to bait you into an argument and you walked away, when you held your tongue in a moment of anger, when you stayed quiet and composed while everyone else lost their cool, those are your reps. That's your training ground. And every time you pass that test, your control gets stronger. You stop being reactive. You stop being predictable. You become the person people have to watch more closely because you don't show your hand. You don't give away tells. You don't get flustered. Now, none of this means you suppress your feelings. Suppression is different from control. Suppression is pretending. Control is power. Suppression is pushing emotions down until they explode. Control is feeling the emotion, understanding it, and choosing your response. That's why emotional intelligence is so essential. It's not soft, it's not a luxury, it's a core skill. It's the foundation for every tactical decision you'll ever make. If you can't understand what you're feeling or why you're going to act out of fear, ego, or pride, and those are the worst places to operate from when the stakes are high. Let's say someone confronts you in public, tries to humiliate you. Every part of your body wants to react. Maybe your heart starts racing. Maybe your breath shortens. Maybe your jaw tightens. That's your nervous system triggering a fight or flight response. If you don't know how to catch it, you'll respond on autopilot. You'll say something reactive that might feel good in the moment, but cost you respect or leverage later. But if you've trained yourself to notice the signs, to slow your breath, to control your voice, to ground your thoughts, you regain your power. You make a conscious choice, and that choice might be to respond with calm clarity, or it might be to say nothing. Either way, you're in charge. This is the hidden superpower of every truly strategic person, their ability to remain calm when others can't. They don't get distracted by drama, they don't get pulled into games, and they definitely don't give away control over something as important as their mind. So the question becomes, are you the kind of person who responds because it's necessary or reacts because it's habitual? Most people will never develop this kind of mental control. It's uncomfortable. It takes discipline. It requires you to be honest with yourself. But if you want to outsmart anyone, if you want to walk through life as a strategist, not a reactor, it starts here with mastery over your thoughts, your triggers, your responses. Because once you master your mind, everything else becomes easier. You stop being driven by emotion. You start making moves with clarity and intent. And no one, not the loudest, not the most confident, not even the most experienced, can rattle you. And that's real power. People are constantly telling you who they are without saying a single word. Most just aren't paying attention. The truth is, if you want to outsmart anyone, you can't just listen to what they say. You have to read what they don't say. You have to see the signals behind the smile, the hesitation behind the compliment, the tension behind the handshake. Outsmarting people isn't about being louder, stronger, or faster. It's about being more aware. Humans are creatures of habit, emotion, and ego. They leak information constantly. Micro-expressions, body language, voice tone, eye movement, word choice. These are not random. They are signals. And every person, no matter how guarded, has patterns. Once you learn to recognize those patterns, you stop playing the game blind. Let's start with the eyes. They're often called the window to the soul, but really they're the window to the mind. People can fake a smile. They can fake politeness. But the eyes rarely lie. Watch for the flicker, the glance away when asked a question, the delayed blink, the narrowing gaze that comes just a second too late. These moments matter. They're not just quirks, they're tells. Someone says they're confident, but their eyes dart to the floor. That's not confidence, that's performance. Pay attention. Then there's the voice. Not the words. The tone. Is it tight, shaky, controlled, too rehearsed, too eager? When someone is speaking to you, listen not just to what they say, but how they say it. Are they over-explaining? Are they pausing too long before answering simple questions? Are they speaking quickly, trying to fill space, or slowly, because they're calculating every move? Speed, pitch, rhythm, all of that is data. All of it gives you insight into their inner world. Now, most people only tune into communication when it's directed at them. That's a mistake. You learn the most about someone when they're not speaking to you, but when they think they're not being watched. Watch how someone treats the waiter, the receptionist, the person they think doesn't matter. That's the real version. Not the polished one they present when they're performing. That moment when their guard is down, that's where you see the truth. But here's the nuance. Reading people isn't about judgment. It's not about labeling someone good or bad. It's about understanding. It's about decoding. If someone walks into a room and makes themselves bigger, broad stance, loud voice, intense eye contact, they're likely trying to project dominance. But is it real confidence or a mask for insecurity? That's the question. And you won't find the answer by confronting them. You find it by observing the details. Watch what happens when someone more dominant enters the room. Do they hold their frame or shrink back? People are always wearing masks, and those masks are built to protect something. Fear, shame, vulnerability, insecurity. Your job is not to rip the mask off. Your job is to see through it. Because once you can see what someone is trying to hide, you gain clarity. You understand their motives. You stop reacting to the surface and start responding to the root. Let's take lying, for example. Most people assume liars avoid eye contact. Not always true. A practiced liar will look you dead in the eye too much, because they've been told that's what honesty looks like, but they often overdo it. It's unnatural, and that's your cue. Real eye contact is fluid. It moves, it breathes. It doesn't lock in and stay rigid when something feels off. Trust that. Your gut processes information faster than your conscious mind. If your instincts sense something strange, it probably is. And then there's body language. Crossed arms, clenched fists, turned feet, shifting posture. These aren't meaningless. They're indicators of where someone's focus and energy are. For instance, feet that point toward the door while someone pretends to be interested in a conversation. That person wants to leave. Shoulders that rise slightly when answering a question. That's tension, possibly anxiety. A fake smile? You'll see it in the eyes. If the smile doesn't reach them, it's not real. It's also worth noting what doesn't happen. Someone who suddenly stops gesturing with their hands, who freezes up or gets overly still, may be guarding something. Deceptive people often think freezing equals control, but in reality, it reveals internal stress. Honest people typically move naturally, expressively. Their thoughts and bodies are in sync. When someone's words say one thing, but their body says another, always believe the body. Of course, the most powerful tool you can use to read someone is listening. And not the kind of listening where you're just waiting for your turn to speak. I'm talking about full attention. No distractions, no multitasking, just present, grounded, intentional listening. You'll be shocked at how much people reveal when they feel seen. Most people never get that kind of attention. Give it to them, and they'll tell you everything without realizing it. People also reveal themselves through what they avoid, the topics they skip, the phrases they use to redirect or deflect. Let's not get into that. It's complicated, or I don't really remember. Pay attention to where they won't go. That's where the truth usually is. And remember, people want to be understood, but not everyone wants to be exposed. That's the balance. When you read people too aggressively, they feel threatened. They retreat, shut down, or become defensive. So you observe quietly, strategically, not to manipulate, but to understand, to navigate, to lead. Reading people isn't a one-time trick. It's a lifestyle, a mindset. The more you practice, the sharper you become. You start seeing things before they happen. You begin to anticipate reactions. You know what someone's going to say before they say it. Not because you're psychic, but because you've trained your attention. You're watching the micro movements, the patterns, the energy shifts. You're decoding the human being behind the performance. And when you can do that, when you can walk into any room, meet any person, and quickly size up who they are, what they want, what they fear, you no longer have to guess. You no longer have to wonder if someone is being real with you. You already know. That level of clarity gives you control, quiet, unshakable control. And that is how you outsmart anyone, by seeing what others don't, and knowing what they can't admit. Silence makes people uncomfortable. In a world obsessed with noise, opinions, debates, reactions, silence feels like an empty space that needs to be filled. But that's where most people get it wrong. Silence isn't empty. Silence is power. And when you learn how to use it intentionally, it becomes one of the sharpest tools in your arsenal. You stop chasing control with words and start commanding it without having to say much at all. The truth is, most people are terrified of silence. In conversations, they rush to fill gaps. They over-explain, over-talk, overshare. Why? Because they think the one who talks the most has the most control. But it's the opposite. The one who can sit in silence without flinching, the one who's comfortable in that stillness, is the one in charge. When you don't rush to respond, you force the other person to wonder what you're thinking, and the minute they start guessing, they've lost their footing. People equate silence with uncertainty. But it can also signal confidence. Stillness, in the right moment, speaks louder than any argument. When someone insults you and you say nothing, it leaves them unsettled. Did they hit a nerve? Or did you not even care enough to respond? That ambiguity creates psychological pressure. It shifts the dynamic. The person who expected a reaction now has to sit with their own words and the weight of your calm. That's the first principle of weaponizing silence. Use it to create space for the other person to reveal themselves. Whether in negotiations, arguments, interviews, or interrogations, silence makes people uncomfortable enough to fill the gap. And when they speak into that silence, they often reveal more than they intended. They justify themselves, they tip their hand, they talk their way into corners, all because they couldn't sit with a pause. This is especially true when you pair silence with the right questions. Strategic questions aren't just about getting answers. They're about shifting energy, destabilizing assumptions, and opening doors others thought were closed. The key isn't to ask a lot of questions. It's to ask the right ones, the ones that go underneath the surface, that interrupt someone's script, that make them pause and say, "No one's ever asked me that before." A powerful question doesn't need to be complex. It just needs to be intentional. What makes you say that? What does that mean to you? Why now? These are disarming questions. They're open enough to allow for a range of responses, but pointed enough to create discomfort if the person is hiding something. When paired with silence, they become nearly impossible to ignore. Ask the question, then wait. Most people ask, then immediately rephrase or answer it for the other person. Don't. Hold the space. Let the silence do the heavy lifting. There's a psychological effect at play here. When someone hears a question and is met with silence afterward, they feel pressure to respond more fully. That pressure makes them dig deeper, even if they don't want to. And if there's a truth they're trying to avoid, the longer the silence stretches, the harder it becomes to hold that truth in. Think about it in terms of negotiation. The person who speaks first after an offer is made is usually at a disadvantage. Let's say you throw out a number or a proposal, and then you go silent. If the other person rushes to fill the space by countering, justifying, or modifying, you learn more about their position. You learn what they're willing to bend on. But if you speak first, you might reveal something you didn't need to. That's why the best negotiators aren't just skilled speakers, they're skilled waiters. They're comfortable letting a moment hang, watching the tension rise, while staying completely composed. There's also an emotional layer to silence. In heated situations, silence can serve as a cooling mechanism. When you don't respond to someone's aggression, you neutralize it. You don't give them fuel. You don't validate their outburst. And in that stillness, they're forced to confront themselves. People expect pushback, especially when they're being provocative. But when you don't give it to them, when you just hold the line and observe, it unbalances them. It makes them wonder what you're thinking, what you're planning, whether you're judging them or simply waiting for the right moment to strike. That's another powerful function of silence. It creates psychological distance. It forces people to step out of their emotional momentum. A moment ago, they were riding high on anger, sarcasm, or manipulation. But now, they're sitting in a pause, alone. And in that pause, they have to reassess. That's your advantage. That's where clarity comes in. The beauty of using silence strategically is that it doesn't require a high status or title. You don't have to be in a position of authority to use it. You just need discipline. Most people don't have it. They equate silence with weakness. But it takes incredible strength to stay still when your ego wants to react. It takes power to let others speak while you watch, assess, and hold your position. Silence also protects you. When you talk too much, you give away information, your thoughts, your biases, your triggers. But when you're silent, people project onto you. They fill in the blanks. They reveal what they fear, what they expect. And if you're listening carefully, you'll catch every clue. You'll learn what motivates them, what rattles them, what they're hiding, all without having to say a word. Strategic silence is not the absence of communication. It's the elevation of it. It's the moment where your presence becomes more powerful than your voice. And when you pair it with precise, disarming questions, you create a rhythm that keeps others off balance. They don't know what's coming next. They don't know where you stand. And that's the point. In a world of noise, the quietest person often has the most control. The one who can pause, wait, and listen without rushing. That's the one who sees everything. That's the one who can outsmart anyone. Because while others are reacting, you're watching. While others are trying to win with volume, you're winning with patience. Silence isn't the absence of power. It's the proof that you don't need noise to have it. Conflict is inevitable. You can't escape it. Whether it's in business, relationships, negotiations, or day-to-day interactions, friction will arise. People will challenge you, doubt you, talk over you, and sometimes outright try to take you down. But here's the secret. Conflict isn't a threat, it's an opportunity. It's one of the few arenas where real power gets revealed. And when used right, conflict isn't something you survive, it's something you use to rise. Most people run from conflict or try to minimize it. They see it as uncomfortable, dangerous, something to smooth over or diffuse. That's a mistake. Because while they're busy trying to avoid the tension, someone else is seizing control of it. If you know how to manage conflict strategically without losing your mind, your cool, or your clarity, you can flip the dynamic in your favor every time. Conflict reveals what people are really made of. When someone's under pressure, their mask slips. You see their ego. You see their insecurities. You see their strategy, or lack of one. And if you're grounded enough to stay calm in that moment, you don't just survive the storm, you own it. That's the power play. Power doesn't always show up in the form of aggression or dominance. Real power is subtle. It's control. It's presence. When someone attacks you and you don't flinch, you've already won the first battle. Most people expect retaliation. They expect heat. So when you stay cool, when your voice is steady and your posture doesn't shift, it forces them to recalibrate. They thought they could provoke you. They thought they could drag you into an emotional response. But now they're standing in front of someone who doesn't play that game, and they have to rethink their entire approach. Turning conflict into a power play doesn't mean becoming passive. It means becoming precise. You don't react out of emotion. You respond with intent. There's a big difference. Emotional reactions are predictable, messy, and easy to manipulate. Strategic responses are controlled, calculated, and carry weight. Let's say someone comes at you in a meeting, publicly questions your credibility, your ideas, your leadership. The knee-jerk reaction would be to defend yourself immediately, to fire back and match their energy. But that's what they want. That's their setup. They want to pull you into a public sparring match because it gives them attention and it makes you look defensive. So instead of engaging, pause, hold eye contact, let the silence stretch, then speak slowly, deliberately, maybe even with a bit of curiosity. Interesting, what makes you say that? Or, let's unpack that. Are you questioning the strategy or the data that led to it? What you've just done is shift the power dynamic. You didn't avoid the conflict. You leaned into it, but on your terms. You made it about clarity, not emotion. Now the spotlight is on them. They have to back up their attack. And while they scramble to justify themselves, you remain composed, sharp, unbothered. That's how power moves. Quietly, but unmistakably. Another key to turning conflict into a power play is recognizing what the other person really wants. Conflict is almost never about what it looks like on the surface. People argue over details, but it's almost always about respect, control, or recognition. If someone keeps challenging you, it might not be about your idea, it might be about their need to feel important or validated. Once you see that, you don't get caught in the content of the conflict. You operate from the context. Sometimes the best move in conflict isn't to fight, it's to redirect. Let the other person run out their energy, then pivot the conversation in a direction they didn't expect. Take control without taking the bait. For example, if someone's being combative in front of others, don't match their fire. Instead, shift the attention back to solutions or outcomes. Let's focus on what gets us the result we both want. Now you've reframed the conflict from personal to strategic. And that repositioning makes you look like the adult in the room, calm, focused, outcome-driven. But there will also be moments when you do need to hold the line. When someone crosses a boundary or tests your limits, it's not always about redirecting, it's about responding with strength. Not aggression, but authority. That means calling out the behavior without emotion. That's not how I do business. Or, if we're going to work together, respect needs to go both ways. You don't need to raise your voice, you just need to speak with clarity and certainty. The tone of someone who's already decided what they will and won't allow. And here's something that separates power players from everyone else. They don't take conflict personally. They analyze it. They use it. They understand that when someone is trying to rattle you, they're showing you their hand, their words, their energy, their timing. It's all a tell. Conflict reveals patterns, and once you spot the pattern, you control the game. So when conflict arises, don't shrink, don't attack, observe, learn, then move. Every confrontation is a stage, every insult a signal, every attack an opportunity. Not to explode, not to retreat, but to position. The person who can stay calm while everyone else burns up in ego and emotion, that's the one everyone watches. That's the one no one forgets. Mastering conflict means knowing when to speak and when to pause, when to assert and when to pivot, when to challenge directly and when to let the silence speak for you. Every situation requires a different approach, but the foundation stays the same: control of your emotions, of your energy, and of your narrative. Conflict will come. It's part of life, but you get to choose what it becomes: a distraction or a demonstration of who you are, a setback or a stage for your strength. The next time someone tries to shake you, don't just survive it, use it, because conflict doesn't take your power away, it reveals it. Most people are playing checkers while life is playing chess. They make moves based on what's right in front of them, emotional decisions, knee-jerk reactions, whatever feels good or easy in the moment. But the ones who win, the ones who consistently rise above, they think 3 moves ahead. They're not reacting to the now. They're already in the next phase, preparing for outcomes that haven't even entered other people's minds yet. Playing checkers in a chess game is how people get blindsided. They get caught up in the small stuff, in surface-level wins, and forget there's a much bigger board at play. They chase validation instead of influence. They defend themselves over nonsense. They try to win arguments instead of winning position. That's short-term thinking. It might get you a few claps, maybe a temporary advantage, but it doesn't build real power. It doesn't make you untouchable. It doesn't give you control. Chess players think differently. They don't just ask, what happens if I do this? They ask, what will they do next and how can I use it? This kind of thinking requires restraint. It demands discipline. Because thinking 3 moves ahead isn't just about being smart, it's about being strategic. You've got to suppress the ego that wants to win right now. You've got to be willing to lose a battle to win the war. That's where most people fall apart. They don't like the discomfort of holding back. They want to clap back, shut someone down, prove a point. But the real win often comes from staying silent, from observing, from waiting for the exact right moment to strike. Let's say someone disrespects you in a professional setting, undermines your authority in a meeting, or challenges your decision in front of others. A checker's move is to react immediately, to prove you're not to be messed with. But that move satisfies your ego, not your outcome. What does the chess move look like? It looks like listening carefully, not overreacting, letting them feel like they've gained ground. Then days or weeks later, you leverage your growing influence to make a move that elevates you while exposing their pettiness without ever calling it out directly. You outposition them, not out-yell them. That's chess. In chess, every piece has a role. Not every piece moves the same, and not every move is about domination. Sometimes it's about sacrifice. You give up something small now to open up the board later. That's how real power works. It's not always loud. Sometimes it's subtle, almost invisible. But that's what makes it devastating. While others are reacting emotionally, you're setting traps. While they're chasing recognition, you're building leverage. Think about how this applies in relationships, business, negotiations. If you only think 1 move at a time, you're always in defense mode, always catching up. But if you train yourself to look further, what happens next? And then after that, you stop chasing. You start anticipating. That's what separates players from masterminds. It's easy to underestimate how often this mindset can change your outcomes. Take a conversation, for example. Most people go into it thinking, what do I want to say? But the strategic mind thinks, how do I want them to feel at the end of this? What reaction am I aiming for? And what sequence of ideas will get me there? It's a totally different approach. You stop saying things just to say them, and you start communicating for effect. You guide people, subtly, to your intended conclusion, and they feel like they arrived there on their own. That's not manipulation, it's mastery. Now apply that to decision-making. Let's say you're offered an opportunity that looks great on the surface. More money, more visibility, more status. A checker's move is to say yes. Of course, why wouldn't you take it? But the chess thinker asks different questions. What does this opportunity cost me in 5 years? What does it align me with? Who does it put me next to? What doors might it close while this one opens? They're not just thinking about the opportunity. They're thinking about the ecosystem around it, about the ripple effects. And sometimes that leads to saying no to something good now, so you can say yes to something great later. It's also how you protect yourself. If you can see 3 moves ahead, you're less likely to be manipulated, caught off guard, or played. People might try to bait you, test you, or corner you. But if you're trained to pause and scan the board instead of reacting, you start to see their patterns. You recognize setups before they unfold. You learn to smell motive, not just message. That makes you dangerous. Calm, but dangerous. And let's not forget timing. A big part of thinking 3 moves ahead is knowing when not to move. That's one of the hardest lessons. You don't have to respond right now. You don't have to act today. Sometimes the smartest move is waiting, letting people underestimate you, letting them think they've won, while you're quietly laying down your next 5 steps. That kind of restraint is rare, but when you've got it, you're playing on a completely different level. Everything changes when you shift your mindset from short-term wins to long-term position. You stop living, move to move, and start playing the whole board. You become more than reactive. You become intentional, focused, tactical. And when others realize you're not just thinking about what's happening now, but what happens next and next and next, they stop trying to outplay you. Because deep down, they know they're still playing checkers. And you're already 10 moves ahead. In a world where everyone is rushing to speak, to react, to win fast and loud, you're going to do the opposite. You're going to slow down, listen harder, see deeper, and move smarter. You're going to stop playing checkers with people who don't even understand the rules of the game you're mastering. Because this isn't about out-talking anyone. It's about outthinking them, outpositioning them, outsmarting them. The most powerful people in the room are rarely the loudest. They're the ones who know when to speak and when to stay silent, when to push and when to wait. They play for position, not attention. They think not just 1 step ahead, but 3. And because of that, they never chase power. Power comes to them. So here's the truth. If you want to outsmart anyone, it's not about being the most educated or the most experienced. It's about being the most aware, the most emotionally disciplined, the most prepared. Master your mind. Read the room. Use silence like a blade. Turn conflict into fuel. Think beyond the moment. That's how you win, without needing to crush anyone. That's how you become someone who can't be shaken, baited, or broken. Stop reacting. Start strategizing. This isn't about playing harder. It's about playing smarter. Checkmate.